is what, I mean, at the level of idea, we're talking about this whole thing which you are talking about, like the referendum in Ecuador. I have, the name of the movie was The Promised Land. The Promised Land. And there also the issue was the same. But how capitalists manipulated this whole referendum process, even in that movie, would be a guide for Ecuador people, I think. And another Elysium. This movie, again, the green bubble issue. They have created another kind of, but my question, not question, but my point is this, that even at the level of idea, they show this, how complicated this issue is, how problematic this environmental issue is. But by showing these complications, again they are making profit to different level. So, and people are not responding to it, the 90% people. So that's my observation, different at the different level.
Okay, why don't you take these three directions as you come up?
Well, what is the position of India?
At these negotiations, since you were there,
Yeah.
they present a very favorable picture themselves. What is your understanding is it?
I think there was a position of India, right, now to go very in detail, because you all are experts. So one position until Copenhagen, and after Copenhagen, that position in a way changed. The position until Copenhagen was the traditional position. That is, we didn't cause this problem, so we don't have to have any kind of agreement that will oblige us to have any limit to our greenhouse gas emissions. That is the traditional position that we will find since the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. That is, who are the historical responsibles? They are the ones that have to do the cuts in greenhouse gas emissions, and developing countries can do what they want to do if there are sufficient funds. If not, they are not obliged. I would say that in Copenhagen, and it's clearly in Cancun and there, they have begun to change and say, it's true we don't have to have any binding commitments, any obligations, but we're willing to speak about some kind of pledges. And they have put on the table pledges. So it's a change because now they accept to discuss the issue of pledges, but I would say that on the other hand, they have accepted that others do also the same. So, and who are these others? Not only China is doing pledges, Brazil is doing pledges, but also the US is doing pledges, Russia is doing pledges, everybody's doing pledges. So now you would say, before we had commitments only from Annex 1 parties, and from non-Annex 1 parties there was nothing, no pledge. Now you have pledges in Annex 1 parties and in non-Annex 1 parties, but they are only pledges, not commitments. I would say that India has the possibility to play a very important role. That is to say, we have the proposal to say that we should have a limit of this, and we, India, can do that. And India can, because the emissions of India are very low. So India could come with a very strong position like that. but I don't see that happening at all. I see that India, at the end of the day, follows more positions that come from the US than really challenging the US. Is that going to continue? Depends on the elections, but as things go, I think it will continue. The 2 degrees Celsius. Scientifically, we have not surpassed the 2 degrees Celsius. So, but we're going to. If we follow the current path, we're going to surpass. Because, and why is it?
Roughly by when? 2030?
No, here the issue is like this. I'm going to kill you. But the moment that I trigger, between the moment I shoot the bullet and the bullet arrives to you,
Yeah.
there is a distance, a time gap. So when the bullet is going to arrive to you is one thing, when I'm going to trigger is another thing. So when the bullet is going to reach you, so that is when you're going to kill you, that's when we will reach the 2 degrees Celsius, probably will be between 2050 to 2070.
2050 to
70.
You are lucky.
No, but there, once trigger happens,
Yeah,
you
but
can't reverse.
once I trigger, he's going to die anyway.
Yeah.
So, now the question is when I will shot the bullet. And that is going to happen in this decade.
In this decade.
In this decade.
18 or 20.
But may I get one
2018,
point here?
2020.
Yeah, sure.
See, this is scientifically, this is not that the 2 degree will happen everywhere at the same time.
That's
In fact, the scenarios that have been built up, the 2 degree is a global mean
Average.
That's right.
in average increase, global mean. So with a 2 degree scenario, there are many places, particularly in the Indian Himalayas, Indian northern areas, and many other areas where there will be a 4 degree plus rise. In fact, that's the IPCC and other scenarios. In fact, the Potsdam Institute scenarios was the same thing.
Yeah.
That means already we are 0.9 degrees up from 1900. So by the time you are 1.5 degrees up, global average, there will be many places in our countries which will be probably 2.5 to 3 degrees above the 90. So it's not that 2 degree happens, that's a magic point for everybody everywhere.
So that 5% will go from here, from
Five-
India.
5%, when will that 5% leave?
Leave India and go
5%?
somewhere.
Our green bubble.
That depends on how much capital they have.
Because we have to see that the Earth is like a
You are
human
trying to
being.
join them.
What is the temperature?
For safer place.
What is the average temperature of a person? 37 degrees Celsius. No? So when we say what is the average temperature of the Earth, of the system, of the planet, the average temperature is 14 degrees Celsius. So it goes up and down. In this region more, in this region less. But the average temperature, like in your body, if we put the thermometer in your hand, it's not the same.
Yes.
But the average temperature is 37. The average temperature of the Earth is 40. We already have increased in almost 1 degree Celsius. When we say 2 degrees Celsius, in reality means that the average temperature will go from 14 to 16. As correctly Singh has said, this doesn't mean that in all parts of the world is going to be 2 degrees Celsius. For Africa, all the studies say that it's going to be twice. So if we have an increase of 2, it will be 4 degrees. And it will depend. It will depend on which period of the year, but the thing, so you can say, oh, no problem, 2 degrees Celsius, I'm going to just buy more lighter clothes. But the issue is that everything is going to be, is being disrupted. So you have rains where you don't have to have rains, you have droughts, the ice, the the glaciers are melting,
Crop yield is
yeah,
already
loss
drastically
of
reducing.
biodiversity and so on. And that is the problem.
This point about making profit out of films, everything. I mean, capitalism is a way of making profit out of everything.
Yeah, that is the problem. That is the problem of this system. It's a system that can make profit out of everything. You have so many quotes that have been quoted in many different books of environment. I was saying, hey, when we talk with Wall Street, they say if there is a crisis, it's a very interesting moment because it's a moment of opportunities. Things are changing, and if you know how to invest in those situations, you can make a lot of money. If things are normal, you will have a normal profit. But if you have a moment where things begin to change and disrupt, there is crisis, and you know how to invest, you can make in 1 year what others have been making in 20 years. And that is their logic.
I mean, there is a complete relationship between capitalist system and climate change. So, if there has been experience of in world in other various parts of the country other than capitalist system, even for a brief period or for some time,
Like
say,
Soviet Union in China.
maybe if you term it as non-capitalist, whatever may be, for 10 years, 12 years,
Cuba.
50 years, Cuba and all kind of things. Because whether system is capitalist or non-capitalist or whatever you like to term it, it follows the same kind of industrial model development. And even Soviet Union didn't find any fundamental deviation from that model of development. And so this is a very serious problem because the entire world is engulfed in that kind of development. Even if there is a change in the name of ideology, the government that comes, by and large, they follow the same pattern. Even in India, there are states which are ruled by so-called socialist leaders. Hardly any change of this kind of choices. So it is very difficult. Then we are almost destined to be doomed in coming years. Because I don't find any that for say 10 years we will find any other political system coming up unless we have very clear-cut vision of Gandhi or Lama or other alternatives of the world that is given by various leaders or philosophers, or we can try it, or even trying community, as you have said, community living, social, back to social kind of settings and all kind of things. So it is not that just 2 degrees Celsius or not 2 degrees Celsius. Finally, we have to find out some ways whether this has to be abandoned and given up, an entire new kind of lifestyle and entire development has to be followed. And this is not a task which can be achieved in a day or two, unless there is a mass education and again mass campaign against this kind of development in the entire world, taken by each and every individual who are convinced about this.
I also you will be.
After
You want to respond to
that,
that? Because is anyone respond to it now or discussion
No,
on
go
this?
ahead.
Yeah?
Go ahead,
Because
whatever you want.
It is shifted to something else, so that's why.
Yeah, by all means.
Yeah, okay. No, so 2 or 3, my name is Nagaraj, for those who know me. I'm part of India Climate Justice and also some others in the room. So, 2 or 3 questions that I had, but before that I just wanted to make a couple of observations about this, part about this 2 degrees Celsius, which is really important.
About the 2
2
degrees.
degrees Celsius thing, yeah. A couple of things. One is that it's an average, essentially, it's a world average, and the reason why it's considered crucial is because the understanding is that certain ecosystems will start responding in ways which will go out of our control if the Earth reaches an average of 2 degrees Celsius. Let's say the Arctic ecosystem or the Amazon, etc., or the soils will get warmer and so it will start
Ocean
oceans will start absorbing less, etc. Exactly. So that's the thing. The other part is that it's now being understood that in the last 10 years warming has actually slowed down, 15 years roughly, when what's called the hiatus. And there are sort of 5 or 6 theories about why that hiatus has happened. And the most accepted one is that a lot of it is going into the deeper oceans and there's some circulation stuff. So actually it's slowed down in the last 15 years, but that's really a veil, because actually it's just going elsewhere. It's going to come up again. It's sort of hiding in a minute, so it's going to get warmer very quickly. But one doesn't know how long this hiatus will actually continue. The third part of this 2 degrees is, the problem is not that we touch 2 degrees and come back. The problem is that ecosystems get seriously damaged when it stays there for really long. And part of the problem of warming is that even if you stop all emissions, science suggests that warming persists for 1,000 years. So if you had 0 emissions today, we'll still have warming and climate change for 1,000 years. And that's part of the problem. So that's the damage to ecosystems. That happens. So yeah, anyhow, that's just a clarification. I had a couple of other questions actually, Pablo, and also Achin, and anyone can respond. There are some people, I think including sections on the left, that talk about zero growth, as something that is a way forward. So theoretically, my question is zero growth possible at all under capitalism? I also don't think so, but if you wish to respond, that is one. The second part is, have we lost control of the capitalist system, essentially speaking? I mean, if you look at the response to the Arctic, it is insane. And there's no other word but insanity. There's not such a dire warming as what's happening in the Arctic. What one scientist called the world's air conditioner. We're losing the world's air conditioner. And certainly, recent weather in parts of the northern hemisphere suggests what damage will happen. I mean, you'd be crazy to go there and look for more gas and oil and whatever else is happening. It's insanity, there's no other word for it. But it's a logic that Pablo talked about, which is logic basically profit, nothing else. Yeah? So have you lost control, essentially, of capitalism? And the third one is something, Pablo, that we touched upon a bit yesterday. I was trying to clarify about energy choices. I think that again, don't mind my repeating because it's a different audience here. Yesterday I talked about, if you're against coal, you're against nuclear, you're against large hydro, where is energy going to come from? And why don't we talk about that in more detail? Now, yesterday I talked about solar, and I also talked about, I think yesterday I was misunderstood when I talked about large private capital. I actually meant solar on a large scale. And my point was, I think we need to accept that given the kind of energy needed, we would need to have solar on a very large scale. It cannot be simply rooftop. It has to be multiple things essentially together. Yeah. And finally, if I may, since you touched on Yasuni, such an important struggle in Ecuador that's going on, would you or anybody else also shed light about what our position could be in India regarding crude? Because India imports 70% of its crude, it's used in various kinds of
80% of this.
80%.
81%.
So how would one look at it, say, within the Indian context? So that's something that anybody, these need not be directed at Pablo alone. I've been covering questions at him the last 2 days, but anybody else can respond. Yeah. Thank you.
Just
Legislation will be the right range.
Well, it's absolutely true because Soviet Union, those countries that were socialist, in relation to productivism, they acted as capitalist societies. It was almost the same. If we look at Russia, or we look at China, not the current China I'm speaking about before, there was this conception that we can do anything with nature. That was not in Marx's theory, but definitely the practice that we have seen, that has been the main conduct. And the main goal was to increase your productivity at any cost, no matter what. So that is why Russia, the Soviet Union, is part of the Annex I countries. So you're absolutely right. With the current left, as it is now, we are not going to have a solution to this problem. So what we need, in reality, we need a different kind of alternative, or if you want to say a left that addresses the social and ecological issues, or a new political alternative that seeks for equity, for humanity, and in relation to nature, So this is, we need to build that alternative. If that alternative doesn't exist, we're going to keep reproducing and reproducing. Maybe we will have, it's better to have a left than a right, no? But if greenhouse gas emissions continue, at the end of the day, we don't solve this problem.
You said better.
It has not become the part of popular political discourse.
It's a part of political discourse and practice. Because in the case of Latin America, we were able to include this in the discourse, but we are still not able to include it in the practice.
Can you say something about, in this context, Cuba's urban organic farming? Has that made a difference? Has that been,
Yes,
been
yes.
an example of what the
Yeah.
left can do?
No, there are many
Do people know
experiences.
what urban organic farming is?
Probably everybody has.
Just elaborate a bit on that.
No, now, you have, in different parts of the world, not at national level, but at local level, in some cities or in some rural areas, very important initiatives. They are very important alternatives when it comes to agriculture, because of course, if you have local agriculture to satisfy local needs, that means you're not going to use fossil fuels to transport those foods from one part of the world to another part of the world. So one of the solutions that has to do with CO2 emissions is we need to have food sovereignty. We have to produce at local level. And we should have in the cities, that is the experience in the case of Cuba, production of crops in the cities, in the garden. And that is very good. I mean, that is, and now we're seeing the same in the case of Europe. So you have experience. You have even experience here. They told me one experience in a slum area where they use all the sewer system that comes together, and they use this in order to produce methane gas, and with that to have energy. Those systems exist, and they have been developed in many cases in very, you would say, communities that don't have too many resources, but are very, very well organized to think on solutions that are not following the logic of, well, how do we make more money, but how we are more efficient. So we have to learn from that. But yes, we need to build a new kind of left. I don't know if you want to call it left or however you want to call it, but there has to be some kind of new political alternative.
You call it left.
If I can respond to Achinji's one point that when you said about what is the Indian negotiators or government's stand, because we also had some opportunity from Copenhagen to Warsaw this year in the last 5-6 COPs, and apart from COPs here in India. See, the Indian, very clearly the Indian government stand now is, though we have given a pledge, and that was pledge and review. My pledge and that will be reviewed, nothing more than that. But the position is we need more carbon space. It's being clothed in a good thing, carbon budgeting. A carbon budget basically means an Indian government has taken that, though this was originated in from a German group and worked on by Martin Kohl's group, South Center. But Indian government has taken this position as their national position, that we are very poor, our carbon emissions are 1.8 tons per person per year, so we need more carbon space. From the last 2 years, they are now clothing it in the name of development space. They found out, because in the last 3 negotiations, last 3 COPs, as Pablo also knows very well, India was looked as a villain by most of the LDCs, by the African Union. India was looked as a villain. India was looked as a blocker, and that's the tag that has been given, the blocker.
It is the villain.
I'm not saying that, but this is a position of the Indian government that we need more carbon space, we'll build more carbon intensive quote unquote development, and that is our right, because our per capita emissions are far lower than even the world average. Where the world average is 4.37, ours is 1.8. So that's the logic. Without considering what is the other impacts, because one aspect that often we miss is we try to put climate change only through the carbon lens. It's not only the carbon lens. If you do something where carbon is not the primary thing, there are a lot of other impacts. So the Indian state position, even in the negotiations, is very clear.
What are other impacts?
See, if you build a coal plant or even you build a solar energy plant, like they are doing, India has a national solar mission. They are building huge solar parks in Rajasthan, and it's a desert area. There are 10,000 hectares areas. 10,000 hectares means 100 square kilometers, which have been cordoned off. There are villages inside, there are paths inside, large amounts of grazing land. And in Rajasthan desert, grazing is the primary livelihood. Large number of people have got displaced and their livelihoods have got displaced. Plus, it's not true that solar has no impact, wind has no impact. You have to wash the panels every 8-10 days. And in a desert like Rajasthan, Halodi, near Jodhpur, Jaisalmer, you can go and see the little water that they used to utilize for once a year farming is now cordoned off. Those are being used by the solar plants for washing the panels. So there are impacts. Even whether you do a coal plant, whether you dam, or you build a huge solar photovoltaic plant. And these have gone in displacement also, because the grazing grounds, you don't really need to do that, because solar plants don't need an exclusive use of the land. But this is being doing because, again, the capitalists that have been given those at 1/10 the circle rate. The land has been given at 1/10 the circle rate. So they have this mentality and they want exclusive control over that.
This connects to Nagaraj's point about the question of renewable energy sources. Because you're pointing out some of the problems